They say the desert remembers. Not the kind of remembering you or I might do, but the old, quiet kind, like a scar remembering the knife. That's the way folks spoke of Holt Mercer. He came riding into Coyote Gulch near 10 years back, alone on a black horse with a face like a thundercloud and a gait too smooth for a beast that size. The kind of horse that didn't spook at gunfire or shy from snakes. Some said he was army. Others whispered darker things, private wars in foreign sand, ghost missions with no medals. Truth was, no one knew. And Holt didn't give anyone the pleasure of finding out. He bought a run-down patch of land just beyond Widow's Creek, built a fence from old railroad ties, and lived quiet. Not friendly, not mean. Just there. Every Sunday, he'd ride Justice, the black horse with eyes like nightshade, into town for feed and coffee beans. Never liquor. Never the saloon. Never a smile. The children watched him like they'd seen a bear that didn't care to eat them. The grown folks kept respectful distance. He had the look of a man who knew what an exit wound looked like from every angle. What set Holt apart wasn't just the limp, though that told its own tale, but the way he moved when he did move. Like every step was calculated, never wasted. The sheriff once said, "If you see Holt run, best you start praying. 'Cause he only runs when something's already on fire." Then came the day the storm began to gather. It was late summer when the Hollow Creek riders blew in. Dust devils chased them like spirits down the canyon trail. 8 men, all bone and bloodlust, led by Colt Maynard, a man who smiled too wide and killed too easy. His reputation rolled ahead of him like thunder. Stagecoaches robbed. Deputies shot. 3 towns left burning. They hit Coyote Gulch fast. No murder, not yet. Just the promise of it, lingering like gun oil on a hot stove. They drank the saloon dry in a night. Took what they wanted, food, coin. Women if they weren't careful. Sheriff Denton, 2 days from retirement and half-blind in one eye, knew better than to start a war he couldn't finish. He offered words. Colt Maynard offered a bullet through the hat rack. The riders stayed on. Holt watched from his porch that first night, a tin cup of coffee in hand, the stars clear and sharp overhead. Justice stood beside him, ears twitching. "You feel that?" Holt muttered. The horse gave a low grunt. Holt nodded once. "Yeah, me too. Trouble, the kind you don't shake off." By the 3rd day, the riders were cocky. Maynard had taken to strutting through town like he owned it. One of his men tried to lift a dress off the preacher's daughter. Holt happened to be near enough to see it. He said one word. "Don't." The man laughed. Holt didn't. Next thing anyone knew, the rider was face first in the dust, arm twisted backward, jaw slack from unconsciousness. Holt stood over him, without breathing heavy. Maynard let it slide. For now. That night, as the sun bled red across the canyon walls, Holt unsaddled Justice and rubbed down his flanks slow and steady. "They're not done," he said, not looking up. The horse nickered low, as if he'd already heard. It happened under a sliver of moon. The gang came quiet, like coyotes. Thought they were clever. Thought they'd humiliate the silent war vet. Maybe teach him what it meant to be afraid again. They stole Justice from a corral just before dawn. Come sunrise, Holt found the gate swinging open. Hoof prints led off into the wild. No sign of struggle. No noise. No blood. Just absence. The town watched him that morning from behind curtains and half-closed doors. They expected rage. Fury. Maybe a shotgun and a one-man warpath. But Holt didn't curse. Didn't load a rifle. He just stood there, staring at the horizon like it owed him something. Old Hattie from the dry goods store shuffled up beside him, voice soft. "You gonna go after them, Mr. Mercer?" He didn't answer right away. Just flexed the fingers of his right hand, like they were remembering something painful. "I don't chase dogs," he said finally. "They come back on their own. Or they don't." Sheriff Denton tried to offer help. A posse, maybe. Holt shook his head. "They didn't steal a horse," he said, eyes distant. "They made a choice they ain't got time to regret yet." That afternoon, a storm rolled in from the east. The sky bruised purple. Wind curled up from the canyon like something angry had been stirred awake. In the saloon, folks talked in low voices. about the man with the war in his eyes, about the black horse that never spooked, about the look Holt had as he sat on his porch again that evening, sipping coffee like nothing was broken. Young Ellie Perkins, the orphan girl Holt sometimes bought bread for, tiptoed up to him near sunset. "They took your friend," she said, voice quivering. Holt looked down at her, the lines around his eyes deep as arroyos. "He knows his way home," Holt said. Ellie blinked. "He's just a horse." "No," Holt said. "He ain't." She frowned, confused, but Holt didn't explain. He simply reached down and ruffled her hair with a calloused hand. "Go on now, little one." As she left, she looked back once. Holt sat motionless, staring out across the desert, watching the wind, listening to something far off that no one else could hear. That night, for the first time since he'd arrived in Coyote Gulch, Holt Mercer didn't lock his door, didn't close his shutters. He left the lantern burning low, the rifle resting on the wall, and outside, where the moonlight silvered the dust, an empty saddle waited on the post. It was the stillness that unnerved folks most. The way Holt didn't act like a man who'd lost something. He acted like a man waiting for something to come back. And every trail hand, shopkeeper, and gunslinger in town felt it in their gut that whatever came next wasn't going to be written in any church ledger or court docket. It was going to be carved into legend. The night they took justice, the wind was restless, shifting through sagebrush and dry grass like it knew something wicked was coming. Coyotes kept their distance. Even the stars seemed to dim. Colt Maynard stood in the dark, staring at the fence line of Holt Mercer's ranch. His face was carved from something unforgiving, lean, sharp, and worn down by too many years chasing smoke and plunder. He tapped the hilt of the knife, strapped to his thigh, with idle confidence. The Hollow Creek riders fanned out behind him like shadows, boots wrapped in cloth, rifles cradled, breath held. "You sure about this?" one of them whispered. "Old man's got to look to him." Colt didn't answer with words, just tilted his head toward the gate. A quiet command. Movement rippled through the group. They split, two veering left, one hopping the fence, the rest slinking through the brush. Holt didn't stir. From the darkness of his porch, he sat with his coffee, steam curling into the chilled air. No fire, no lamp, only the red cherry of a cigarette glowing faint between his fingers. He watched them come. He didn't move. Not when they reached the barn. Not when they opened the gate. Justice stood calm in the shadows, muscles still under midnight hide. His eyes caught the moonlight, a cold, intelligent gleam. He didn't rear or bolt, just snorted once, as if insulted by the company. "Got you now, you pretty bastard," one outlaw muttered, looping a rope around the stallion's neck. Justice didn't resist. Holt exhaled a long breath, flicked his cigarette into the dirt. "Go," he whispered. From the porch, nothing more. The riders led the horse down the slope in silence, vanishing into the dark with smug grins and callous laughter held behind their teeth. They didn't know what they'd taken. Not yet. By morning, the sun broke over Coyote Gulch like a match strike. Sheriff Denton rode out at dawn, spurred by a nervous deputy and rumors carried on wind. He found Holt standing in the corral, jaw tight, hands folded behind his back. "Sorry, Mercer," the sheriff said. "I'll get a team together." "No need," Holt replied. Denton adjusted his hat. "You know who did it." "I do. You want him brought in, don't you?" "I want the dust to settle." The sheriff squinted at him, puzzled. Holt just turned and walked back toward the cabin. The door creaked shut behind him. From the porch rail, a saddle hung empty, swaying slightly in the wind like a pendulum. In the saloon, the story spread fast. That the Hollow Creek riders had struck again. That Holt Mercer had just let them. No shots fired. No justice served. "Man lost his edge," said Jeb Rollins, spitting tobacco juice into a spittoon. "Should have gone out guns blazing." "He's old," someone else muttered. "Old and beat. Ain't got the fire no more." Only Ellie Perkins disagreed. The girl sat on the step of the general store, hands clasped around her knees, eyes fixed on the horizon. She whispered to herself, "He didn't lose anything. He's waiting." Meanwhile, miles out in a sandstone canyon, the riders made camp. Justice was tethered to a low tree near the fire, chewing slowly on a patch of dry weeds. The men joked about racing him against wild mustangs, selling him to a Mexican cartel, or teaching him to dance for whiskey. Colt Maynard didn't laugh. He watched the horse like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Something in the animal's posture, alert, too calm, bothered him. "Any of you seen a horse just stand still like that?" he asked. "Probably broke real good." Someone answered. Colt shook his head. "No, it's thinking. Horses don't think like that." He got up, stepped closer to Justice. The horse didn't flinch, just turned his head slightly, ears angled back. Colt narrowed his eyes. "Ain't no normal beast. What kind of man teaches a horse not to fear?" The men shrugged. Colt said nothing else, but that night he ordered double watches. Justice waited, silent, watching. On the second night, he tested the rope. Slight shifts, quiet tugs. He waited until the man on watch leaned back, dozing under the weight of his whiskey. Then he stepped forward, twisting his neck. The knot came loose. No one heard him leave. Justice moved like smoke, hooves silent on sand and stone. He cut east, then north, away from town, away from everything familiar. He moved with purpose, down narrow ravines, past thorn-choked arroyos, across an old dry wash that hadn't seen water in 20 seasons. By dawn, he reached the foot of a box canyon. There, the world was still. A pair of javelinas darted through the brush. A hawk wheeled overhead. Justice gave one sharp snort, then stamped his front hoof once. The sound echoed. A door opened. From beneath a camouflage of rock and scrub, a man stepped out. His beard was streaked with gray. His rifle was slung low, easy in his hand. He blinked at the horse, then nodded. "Well," he said, voice raspy, "guess it's time." More doors opened. From the earth itself, a handful of others emerged, silent men with withered faces and sharp eyes. Their movements were clean, deliberate. They didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. Justice walked forward and stopped before one of them, a tall figure with burned scars down one side of his neck. The man touched the stallion's cheek. "He come alone." "He always does," said the first. There was no fanfare, no shouting, no speeches, just the sound of metal clicking into place, buckles tightening, boots scraping dirt. They saddled up. They moved out. In Coyote Gulch, no one noticed Holt slip into town that morning. He visited the post office, left a small envelope in Box 17, an account no one but him had ever claimed. Then he went to the churchyard and laid a single bullet at the foot of the Veterans Monument. He didn't speak, just turned and walked back down Main Street. Colt Maynard returned to their camp the next night with 2 fresh horses and a bottle of stolen rum. He stopped cold when he saw the empty post where Justice had been tied. No hoof prints, no tracks, just the absence. He cursed and spun on his heel, eyes scanning the ridge. "You," he said to one of his men. "You were supposed to be on him." I was. I didn't even." Colt punched him in the gut. The man folded with a wheeze. "Find him," Colt growled. "Find that horse, or I'll gut the whole damn crew one by one." But they wouldn't, because the horse wasn't running from them. He was running toward something. Back in Coyote Gulch, the wind shifted again. The sky took on the pale, coppery color it wore before thunder. Ellie Perkins looked up from her chores, squinting at the horizon. Far off, dust rose in a long, thin trail. Too many riders for a patrol. Too few for a raiding party. She smiled just a little. "They're coming," she whispered. And this time, she wasn't talking about the outlaws. The riders came at dusk, when the sky smoldered orange behind the jagged peaks. 7 of them. No more, no less. They didn't gallop. They didn't shout. They just moved, quiet as ghosts, steady as sunrise. Their coats were dust-worn, their faces shaded by broad-brimmed hats, eyes hidden behind glass or scars or time. Not a one of them under 50. Not one without a limp, a burn, a haunted look. They were old soldiers, every one, some Union blue, some Confederate gray. A few didn't wear colors at all. And at their center rode Justice, reins loose, hooves striking the earth with deliberate rhythm. People came out of their homes when they heard it. the slow thunder of hooves, the low creak of saddle leather. They squinted into the falling light and didn't speak. Not at first. Sheriff Denton stepped into the middle of the road, hands on his belt. He didn't recognize the riders, but he recognized what they carried. Not just rifles, but something heavier. A silence that didn't come from fear. It came from having nothing left to lose. The leader dismounted first. A tall man with a scar across his left eye and fingers stained dark with old ink. He walked straight to the sheriff and handed him a folded paper. "This your jurisdiction?" he asked. Denton nodded slowly. "It is." "Then here's your problem and our permission." The sheriff opened the paper. Military orders. Outdated by a decade, but real. Signed, stamped, and sealed with a red wax crest long since buried in some bureaucrat's desk. "These men are dead on paper," the tall one added. "But they ain't done yet." Justice trotted up beside them and stopped in front of the saloon. Holt stepped from the porch across the street. He looked older now. Not in body. His posture hadn't slumped, and his stride was still steady, but in the weight behind his gaze. Like a man walking back into something he'd buried and left without a marker. The scarred man tipped his hat. "Been a while, Mercer." "Too long, Briggs." "You still slow." "Only when I aim." Briggs chuckled once, dry as a cough. "Good." Colt Maynard and the Hollow Creek riders were camped just beyond the ridge. They'd stolen fresh supplies, raided a ranch for whiskey, and were planning to push south in the morning. The stolen horse was forgotten now, an irritation more than anything. But irritation had teeth. When the sentry stumbled into camp, bleeding and breathless, Colt sprang up. "Riders," the man gasped. "Coming from the north. Not law. Something else. Looking for blood." Colt spat into the fire. "Then they'll get it." They readied quick. Rifles loaded. Horses saddled. Positions taken across the ravine that guarded their camp's entrance. They'd fought their way out of tighter traps before. They weren't scared, but they should have been. Holt didn't ride with the others when they came. He walked, rifle slung, hat low. Justice paced beside him. Behind him, the others fanned out in a crescent, guns held loose, fingers light on triggers. Briggs rode high on a ridge above, watching like a hawk. "Don't shoot till it starts," he warned the men. "Let Mercer speak." Colt stood in the mouth of the canyon, shotgun over his shoulder. "Well now," he drawled. "Look who found his backbone." Holt didn't reply. He stopped 10 paces away. Looked Colt dead in the eye. "You stole from me," he said. Colt grinned. "A horse? Man, I've stolen kingdoms in saddlebags. What makes yours special?" "He's not a horse," Holt said, voice flat. "He's the last part of me you ain't bled out." Colt raised a brow. "You come to make a speech?" "No." Holt dropped his coat. Beneath, his shirt was faded army green, patches removed. But the bloodstains were real. "I came to bury what's left of me," he said, "and I figured you'd help." Justice stepped forward, slow, then stopped beside him like a second shadow. The canyon fell silent. Then a shot cracked like lightning. No one saw who fired first. But once it started, it didn't stop. The reinforcements weren't fast. They weren't young. But they were precise. Calm. Efficient. Years of battles in foreign soil and broken borders had taught them to make every bullet count. The Hollow Creek riders fell back, scrambling into cover. But the veterans didn't charge. They advanced like a tide, unstoppable, silent, controlled. Colt fired from behind a boulder, caught one in the leg. The man didn't flinch, just dropped to a knee and returned fire, catching Colt's second in the shoulder. Holt moved through the smoke like he'd never stopped. One shot, one breath. He walked through the storm with Justice circling him, eyes scanning for threats. Then came the moment. Colt ran out of shells. Holt stepped into view. The others held back. "I'll gut you." Colt roared, drawing a knife. Holt didn't draw. He dropped his rifle, raised his fists. Colt charged, but Justice moved first. The stallion reared, hoofs flashing. One struck Colt across the jaw, sent him spinning. Before he hit the ground, Holt was there. He caught the outlaw midfall, drove a knee into his chest, and slammed him into the dirt. Colt gasped, eyes wide. "You ain't the first devil I've seen die slow." Holt whispered. But you might be the last. He stood, walked away, left Colt gasping in the dirt, broken. The riders surrendered not long after. What few survived limped down the canyon trail, hands high. In the silence after the battle, Holt stood beneath the stars again, Justice beside him. Briggs rode down, dismounted. You done? Holt nodded once. He came back for me, so I came back for him. Briggs clapped him on the shoulder. Reinforcements, he said, ain't always men. Holt didn't answer. He just watched the desert, waiting for the wind to carry the tale. They called it Dry Widow's Bluff because it overlooked death. A high, sheer drop where wind tore at your coat and the land below stretched dry and colorless to the edge of memory. Folks said the place got its name from a woman who'd waited there, watching the horizon for a husband who never returned. In the end, she stepped off the ledge, swallowed by silence. That wind still whispered stories. And on this day, it carried the weight of one more. Holt Mercer stood at the edge, the cliff beneath his boots brittle with age and sun. Justice stood behind him, still and watchful, his mane flickering like flame in the wind. The old soldier's eyes weren't on the canyon. They were locked on the figure approaching, step by deliberate step, each footfall deliberate on the sun-baked stone. Colt Maynard. He wasn't dead, not yet, but he looked like a man who had shaken hands with the Reaper and talked his way out of the final ride. His right arm was bound tight in stained linen, jaw swollen, limping from a busted knee. He didn't come armed, not visibly. He came with something heavier, vengeance. Behind him, the remnants of the Hollow Creek riders kept their distance. Most had scattered to the wind after the canyon fight. They were broken, their taste for outlaw life gone sour. The few who remained didn't speak. They just watched, maybe out of loyalty, maybe just to see how it ended. You should have killed me, Colt said, voice graveled from dust and bruises. Holt didn't flinch. I'm not in the business of finishing cowards. Colt's lip curled. You think I'm afraid of dying? No, Holt said. I think you're afraid of being seen for what you are, just another man who never earned the legend he tells himself. Colt paced slowly, drawing closer to the edge. His boots scraped against stone. You know what they used to call me down in Rio Hondo? Death's left hand. Only thing you ever killed was trust, Holt said. The wind whistled louder, pushing dust between them like a boundary. You think this ends with a fistfight? Colt asked. You think I walked up here to bleed polite? I think, Holt said, stepping forward. You came here because you needed someone to tell you it's over. Colt reached into his coat and drew the knife slow. Bone handle, blade notched with years. He held it low and loose, like he was shaking hands with it. You brought a knife to a graveyard, Holt said, voice low. Colt lunged. It was fast, desperate, not graceful, not trained. Just rage and bone-deep fury, given teeth and steel. But Holt wasn't where he'd been. He shifted aside, grabbed Colt's wrist, twisted. The knife dropped, clattering once before teetering on the edge. They fought without elegance. Old men, weathered and scarred, locked in a struggle neither of them could afford to lose. Fists struck ribs. Elbows slammed jaws. The ground was unforgiving, and so were they. Colt broke free and tackled Holt backward. They slammed against a rock outcropping near the edge of the bluff. Justice whinnied loud, hooves scraping stone. Holt gasped but drove a knee into Colt's gut. Rolled. Came up swinging. You ain't no soldier, Holt growled. You're just a man who forgot what it means to protect. Colt spat blood. You think your damn horse makes you better than me? No, Holt said, but he never lied about who he was. Colt scrambled for the knife. Holt stepped forward and kicked it. It spun once, then sailed over the edge, lost to the yawning gorge below. Breathing hard, Colt staggered upright. You gonna throw me off, then? Like that widow? I don't have to, Holt said. You already jumped. He turned his back, walked away. Colt's scream was pure animal, a final, futile wail. He charged. Justice moved. The stallion slammed forward, shoulder first, hitting Colt like a hammer of flesh and bone. Colt tumbled, hit the ground, rolled. One hand clawed for purchase, but there was none. The cliff took him. No scream followed. Just the sound of wind and a long, distant silence. The Hollow Creek riders didn't move. They watched Holt return to Justice's side, take the reins, and mount with quiet purpose. He chose the fall, Holt said, voice carrying across the open rock. Let him be legend somewhere else. No one argued. They rode back in silence. Holt led, Justice bearing him with unshaken calm. Behind him rode the rest of the old war dogs, faces unreadable, eyes fixed ahead. They didn't celebrate. They didn't sing. Just let the dust rise behind them, a trail of memory that the wind would carry. Back in Coyote Gulch, word spread before they arrived. By nightfall, Ellie Perkins sat on the general store step again, whispering to the sky. They'll tell this one, she said, long after the wind forgets the rest. Holt didn't return to his cabin. Not right away. He tied Justice to the post outside the church, walked inside, and sat in the back pew. No preacher. No crowd. Just stillness. He closed his eyes and bowed his head. He wasn't praying. Just remembering. The veterans didn't linger, either. Some rode east, some west. One left behind a small metal box with the sheriff. Inside, a worn photograph of a young man in uniform. And a note. Tell her I stayed till the end. The sheriff locked the box in the drawer, said nothing. In the weeks that followed, folks came to Dry Widow's Bluff and left stones. Not for Colt. For the tale. The warning. A marker carved by wind and blood and old men who refused to be forgotten. As for Holt, he returned to the ranch one morning, saddle light, heart quiet. He walked Justice into the corral, removed the bridle, and gave him a nod. Go if you want, he said. Justice stood a moment, then turned and trotted to the barn. Holt smiled, faint and weary. Some wars never end, but some do. And when they do, it's not with banners or parades. It's with the silence after the final breath, with hoofbeats fading into peace, and with a man, just one man, standing alone, knowing he didn't win, but that he didn't lose either.